This week, we're talking about the Affordable Health Care Act, commonly known as ObamaCare, and we're headed to Washington, D.C. to talk to U.S. Senator Marco Rubio. Thank you so much for joining us today here on Political Connections. You know, last week you wrote an op-ed piece that criticized the President's Affordable Health Care Act, as well as the Supreme Court's decision to just let the law stand based on the premise that it could fall under the taxing power of Congress. Tell us, though, why you think this was not the right decision for the court to make.
Well, first of all, I respect the Supreme Court, but I disagree with the decision that they made. The Supreme Court ruled, barely, by the way, in a 5-4 majority, that the reason why this thing was legal is because it was a tax. And I think it's a bad idea. That's the very reason why they upheld it, is the reason why I'm against it, because it's a tax. What it does for, let me give you an example. If a small business in Orlando, let's say, in Central Florida, run by a couple, making $95,000 a year between both of them, let's say a husband and wife run like a t-shirt shop or something, and they make $95,000 a year together in this small business, they're going to owe the IRS like $2,000 a year if they can't come up with a $5,000 or $6,000 family policy. That's just terrible. That's going to happen to millions of people all across the country who now are going to have an IRS problem because of this law. I mean, that's going to hurt growth at a time when we should be growing the economy, when small businesses like the one I just described need help. The last thing they need is an IRS problem, which is what this law now creates.
Let me ask you this. What do you say to the folks who said, okay, but now so many other people will be included into the system and get medical coverage? What do you say to that argument?
Well, I think medical coverage is important. We do have a health insurance problem in America, but how does creating an IRS problem for people solve that? If you can't find an affordable medical plan to cover you and your family, and not just affordable, but it has to cover certain things, then you have to pay the IRS $2,000. And you still don't have health insurance. The $2,000 doesn't get you anything. It's basically a tax. It's what they are charging you because you don't have health insurance, to punish you. I think that's ridiculous. How does that help people? How does that solve the problem? So I think that there's a better approach. We have to scrap this whole thing and start from scratch. I think this was a bad thought-out idea. I think it's unfortunate the Supreme Court upheld it, because at a time when our economy isn't growing and jobs aren't being created, this is only going to make it harder.
Let me ask you this. A lot of folks say you are not one to mince words, okay? In a speech recently, you said our political system is broken. You've heard that so many times before. It bears repeating. I ran because I was frustrated by the political process. Nothing has happened over the last year and a half to change that frustration. Unfortunately, the only thing being done in the Senate these days is creating material for television commercials in the fall, and it is sad, end quote. What do you see as the solution to that, and what are you personally doing as senator from us here in Florida to affect the change?
Well, the solution to that is for people to have a sense of urgency, the people that are here to finally wake up and realize that these issues that we're facing aren't going to go away on their own. They have to be confronted. They have to be solved. What I'm doing is I'm looking for ways to get things done. For example, I have a bill called the AGREE Act, and the reason why it's called the AGREE Act is because it's common sense ideas that both Republicans and Democrats agree on. In essence, these are things that everyone agrees on. Conservatives agree on it. The president agrees on it. There are a lot of things we disagree on, but there's a bunch of small business ideas that we do agree on. Why can't we pass the things we agree on and then continue to work or debate the things we don't agree on? I can't get a hearing on it. We have a tax bill coming to the floor today where we may try to run this bill as an amendment. We can't get amendments filed because Senator Reid and the Democratic majority won't allow any amendments to these bills. They've paralyzed the process. And by the way, they're filing a bill that's unconstitutional in the way that they're doing it, which proves it's a show vote, not even a real measure to try to confront the issues that we face. Look, I think people, no matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, a conservative or a liberal, we have to wake up and realize that these problems that our nation are confronting are not going to solve themselves. They're not going anywhere. They need to be confronted and they need to be solved, and we're running out of time to solve them. And I just don't sense that urgency in this building when I come to work every day.
Tell me this, do you agree or disagree about the Bush-era tax cuts? That's making headlines right now. Well, middle class involved, the upper echelon of society. What's your take on that?
Well, look, here's what I say about that. The people call it the Bush-era cuts, but it's the existing tax code. It's what the taxes are right now, and our economy's not doing well. And now you're going to raise taxes on people? Why? Number one, the money that this generates, the taxes that the president is saying is going to raise taxes, the taxes he's trying to raise from what he calls rich Americans, which, by the way, is anyone making more than $200,000 or a small business making more than $200,000. People would argue with you that that's not rich given the cost of living in many parts of this country, including some of my Democratic colleagues are making that argument. But how is that going to help grow the economy? It doesn't pay down the debt. You know, this tax increase the president is proposing, it barely makes a dent on the debt, but it is going to hurt job creation. Again, it's a stunt. It's class warfare. It's the kind of stuff this president's been doing habitually, dividing Americans against each other, telling middle-class Americans that the salvation to our problems is to raise taxes on people that he thinks are making too much money. It doesn't solve any problems, and it creates a bunch of other problems. That's my objection to it.
Senator, finally, the whole back and forth, will he, won't he be the VP candidate? What does your wife Janet tell you about all this when you're, brushing your teeth at night, trying to wrap it up? What's her take on it?
Well, we've made a decision not to even publicly discuss this anymore. A couple months ago, I made a decision not to talk about the process anymore. Governor Romney's going through this process now, and here's what I can tell you for sure. Governor Romney has always made good decisions in his life. That's why he's a successful person at everything he's ever done. And I know he'll make a good decision for vice president as well. So I know everyone's curious to find out who it's going to be. I think we should all just relax and let him make his choice. He's always made good decisions. He'll make another one now.
So if he asks, will you say yes?
Well, I'm not discussing the process anymore, but I can tell you for sure he's going to make a great choice.
Well, thank you so much. Florida Senator Marco Rubio joining us from Washington.